Hello, RoboCon. Hello, world. Hello, humans. Hello, robots. Welcome to the last tutorial of the day. We will have an awesome tutorial with our very special guest from Minnesota, USA, Kelby Stein. And this is a tutorial of RoboCon Online 2025. If you're just stumbled around that or above that stream here, this is part of RoboCon, our annual Robot Framework conference. If you don't have a ticket yet and you're interested in more Robot Framework content, just go to RoboCon.io and purchase a last-minute ticket there. We will have 2 days of awesome talks, a lot of community part. We will be in GatherTown all together, have nice sessions there with all the community members, do maybe some live coding, join the Q&A. You can also join this tutorial or participate at this tutorial by giving comments using the chat in YouTube, or if you already be a ticket owner, go to your ticket page and join our stream here in StreamYard, where you can also directly interact with our nice guest here. So I will now pull on stage Kelby Stein. Hello, Kelby.
Hello.
Welcome on stage. How is life in USA at the moment? Not
It's
to get political. Just your personal life.
Minnesota is great.
So it's still cold there, or is it already kind of springish?
It's going between. We're actually we had a thaw, so we have no snow now, but we're gonna get a big snowstorm overnight. So
okay,
there you go.
So you're still I just also learned like Minnesota is Antarctica of USA, so it's kind
Pretty
of
close.
the deep freezer of the USA, and you have sometimes or occasionally -0 degrees Fahrenheit there, right?
Yeah, I think for those of you playing with freedom units,
USA.
Oh, USA. I think just a couple weeks ago we got down to like -20 here. So
Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit.
What the heck? Okay. Okay. So I think for those in the rest of the world, what is that? -30 degrees Celsius or so?
Yeah, it's pretty close.
That's freaking cold. Okay.
Yes.
So nice that you survived that temperatures. Kelby, maybe not everyone knows you. So you are since a few years pretty regularly active in the Robot Framework community. I think 4 years, 5 years, basically since Corona. Is it so that you joined community during Corona, or?
Yeah, it was a tail end, and my first presentation talk was at the hybrid RoboCon.
Oh, so
May
22.
22, yeah.
Okay.
So
you were in Helsinki, or you were online?
I was
At
online.
that time. You were online, okay. But afterwards, 23 and 24, you were in Helsinki, right?
Yes, I was.
This year you didn't come to Helsinki. Was it too warm for you, or?
No, I have a super talented child clarinet player that got into an honor band, and their performance was at the same time. And I'm a good parent, so I actually showed up.
That's good. That's good. You are accused.
But next year.
Next year. I'm counting on you next year. Next year, KB will also bring his Alphorn and like a 2-meter wide horn, and will play something for me on the Helsinki Market Square. He promised that last year. So
I promised it last year. Yes, I did.
So as you see, Kelby is always a little bit of a fun guy. If you see some gnomes running around, probably Kelby has something to do with the gnomes. Exactly these. Kelby, what are you having for us today?
Today is a tutorial to kind of address the question. A question I see a lot on Slack is, how do I set up a project? Where do I start? And while we do have a fabulous guides page, check it out. I'm bringing in a different approach that the project should be built from the test level, because when we worked with Robot Framework for the very first time, being able to like have your test cases and then build the project back from what application you're actually testing from makes more sense. There's some guidelines. I mean, if you're well experienced and you're actually looking for just I know what I'm doing and I just need a framework, sure, use the guides. But if you're just starting out and you're trying to understand how everything fits together and build a project custom to your application, that's kind of what I'm talking about here.
Okay. Cool. How did you come to Robot Framework in the first place?
Well, I'll be covering that in my talk, so I don't want to give away too much.
Not spoiling that, okay?
but a little teaser. I had a manager that told me I had to learn it in order to, because the company I was working at the time, previous employee created a robot framework project, and the boss said, "Can you get this back up and running?" And he knew that I had test automation experience in other languages, and said, "Kelby, you have 1 month. Go."
Okay, go. Okay, but I mean, it's also refreshing to have a smart manager and telling you the right thing to do.
Well,
so
yeah,
we really appreciate that you threw Kelby in the robot framework cold water and say, okay, swim. And as it seems to be, you are now capable of swimming very well. You are also one of the co-authors of the Robot Framework Style Guide. We already had Manana in the morning here. She's also co-author. And then we have Guido from Netherlands, who also co-authored it. And this is also, you will also find it at docs.robotframework.org. If you go to the guides and then go to test case styles, you will find all that there.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. One last thing that I want to mention are the sponsors of RoboCon before we then jump to the topic. So this year we have Index 9, a consultancy and test automation company from India, who is actually the platinum sponsor of RoboCon. So they spend some money to develop further the tool that they are also using, which is really highly appreciated. So maybe think also about that. How much license costs has Robot Framework saved you? How much made Robot Framework your life nicer? And maybe you want to pay something back and support the community by sponsoring RoboCon or becoming a Robot Framework Foundation member. So go to robotframework.org/foundation. You can then spend some money and participate a very small portion on the efforts that we are spending to fund Robot Framework, fund maybe also some ecosystems. Also, a big shout out to the sponsors below here, TeamScale, BQA, Imbus, where I am working for. So also consultancy companies like Efficode, Vala, and Go4. So also those companies are spending a lot for Robot Framework. We also have some silver sponsors that you will find on RoboCon.io. And again, as said, if you don't have a ticket yet and Kelby made you a little bit hungry on more, just purchase a ticket. You can still join RoboCon and have full access to all talks. That said, to all participants in YouTube and also the participants here in StreamYard, just participating, using the chat, communicating about what Kelby is talking there. You can also ask questions. So if you have a question to Kelby, just write a capital Q and then your colon, your question behind there. Then I directly see, okay, that's the question for Kelby. I will then pull it up on screen after Kelby had done a block of talking, and he can interact with you. So that's one possibility. Otherwise, you can also just use the chat for asking your question to the other participants and answering it yourself. And maybe I will pull up one of your things as well. So, Kelby, you're ready to rumble?
I guess so. Let's go.
Okay. Let's go. And Kelby, stage is yours.
All right. Well, as said before, Minnesota, USA. That's where I'm from. It's right there. Come on, you can do it. So if you're wondering where in the United States, we are bordering Canada. And I always have this disclosure for all my presentations that I did not harm any gnomes or trolls. And if you are curious, the gnome pictured here that I'm featuring in all of my slides was actually made by my wife. So thank you, Amy. Building a test project from the test upwards. So I kind of chatted a little bit about that with Renee, but the idea here is oftentimes I look at the newbie channel in Slack and the question of how do I build a project? How do I best build out my resource files? How do I refine my test cases so that they're a little bit more readable? Comes up often. And I've developed over the years, and this is even before, dare I say it, before Robot Framework, developed a sort of refinement pattern to build out those resource files. So I'm just going to take you through my thought process for building out, the test cases, then building out the keywords, working with variables, abstracting to resource files, and then further refining it on like even more abstraction to the point that you will end up with very readable test cases. And in some cases, you'll start seeing patterns that you could actually like improve upon. So what are we going to test? I always because if I'm going to give you a tutorial example, trying to find a website or a service that you can like work with and mold with, it can be difficult, but we already have one that we recommend. The RESTful Booker can be found on the docs.robotframework.org website. It's a great little site. Let me see if I can. So here it is. It has a front end, with a little bit of, got a little header. You can book a room. You can even send like pretend messages to the admin. Speaking of admin, it has an admin page. You can actually log in. Take a look around. You can navigate through the different screens, and of course, it's not behaving. So here you can actually navigate through the different kinds of screens. There's different areas that you can actually interact with. So a lot of testing possibilities. There's even, if you pull up DevTools, hopefully this works. And you look at the network, you can see that if you click on certain...
Zoom a little bit in the page and also in the DevTools. Is that possible?
Oh, yeah. I can try.
Okay, that's awesome. Oh,
yeah, so you can see... Yeah. Oh, gosh, that's huge. And actually, I can make this bigger so you can see things. Yeah. So, you get a sense that there's also some back-end stuff you can play with. So it's a very good playground, and until the owner decides to take it down, it's free to use. It's very comical to go on the website at certain times of day because you can tell other people are playing with this website, because suddenly there'll be like 50,000 rooms show up, but the data resets every 10 minutes. Just so if you're looking to find a good playground, this isn't so bad. And we kind of outline it in our on this page right here. So that's what we're going to test. So one of my mottos when it comes to test automation, just automation in general, is automation in the code itself is the easy part. It's everything else that's difficult. And the first mantra that I always like to go with is no plan, no project. So you got to have a test plan. You have to have a sense of where you're going to do, what are you going to test. So for this tutorial, I came up with a really basic test plan. So I have some UI tests, and I'm going to leverage Selenium just because I just picked it random out of a hat. I'm going to do a little bit of verifying confirmation message after submitting a message, maybe verify some error messages, and maybe do a little bit of admin tour test where you're kind of like clicking on all the little nav bar sections. Also, a couple of REST API tests. There's some REST backend pieces going on, so we'll show a little bit of that. And finally, hybrid tests. So there may be cases where you want to both, use REST API with front-end testing at the same time. So I have a couple of examples of that. And this is just something for conversation. Other things that you could test would be databases, other kinds of systems. It really depends on your application. So back to the test plan, come up with a good test plan. That is the first thing that you really should think about. And I don't care how you generate it, because AI is a thing, and sometimes you can feed in acceptance criteria into AI and say, give me a test plan, and it will give you a good starting point for that. So something to experiment. I will not be covering anything AI today. So, and I also have a basic project checklist. First, choose a testing tool. I know we're all in robot framework land. Heaven forbid we choose something else, but always think about this. But for today, it's robot framework. Choose a language. And what do I mean by language? It's not like you and I speaking. It's, does the testing tool require another language? In the case of robot framework, we're talking Python most of the time. Although, as per tutorial earlier, maybe something else. Next, highly recommended, think about dependency management. The reason why this is so often overlooked is that a lot of tutorials online, from the other vendors on the planet, when someone's giving a presentation on how to set a project, very rarely do they talk about the actual management of the dependencies in your project. I make it forefront, like, this is what you're going to do, because you want reliable setup between all your testers. So, and I don't care what you use. Today, I chose Poetry. I know there's other more fancier, exciting things, but sometimes you work at a company where you have to do things. Now Poetry is considered old school. So whether you use Poetry, whether you use pip-env, whether you use just like pip in general, or UV or what have you, choose one. Next, understand what libraries you're going to choose. So like obviously UI testing, like I said, Selenium. REST API testing, it's the requests library. So those are the tools I'm going to be using today, but your application might be different. And finally, choose IDE tooling. If you answer all the other pieces up front, this will kind of corner you into what kind of tooling you're going to use. Today I'm using VS Code, but someone else could be using PyCharm. If you really feel excited about it, you could use Vim. I mean, it's an option. But beyond just the IDE itself, you want to think about, okay, what plugin am I going to use? Today I'm using Robot Code. What other kinds of linting do you want to have? You're going to support Python, so think about what kind of linting tools you're going to use there. The choices are infinite. Today I'm going to use RoboTidy and RoboCop because I'm using Robot Framework, so those are the tools I'm going to use. I'm kind of old school. I do like my PyLint for linting a Python, but I'm not going to show any Python today, so I'm not worried about that. So let's look at the starting point. Okay, I've created my tests and they are working. at the end of the day, regardless of anything that I cover, working tests are always more valuable than not working tests. So if you've written your test and you've gone through this whole process and your test still kind of looks ugly, but it's working, it's more valuable than the not working test. But given that, we can do better than this. I've written 3 test cases, of which I will show you what they look like eventually. I don't know why I have a blank page in there. Okay, everyone breathe. But everyone's been here. Everyone's done this. Okay, just suspense is killing everyone, I'm sure. So we've made tests like this, where you have not abstracted anything. You haven't done anything using variables. You've hard-coded all the values. And you've created tests like this. I guarantee that you have. If you've done it otherwise, I guess you're lucky. But this is not where you want to be. Well, maybe you do. Really, depending on use case, if you're testing an application that only has like a few testable use cases, and you really don't need to go all out on abstraction or like using keywords or variables or anything like that, this is somewhat acceptable. There are arguments for just using all of the keywords that come naturally in libraries. And that's fine, but we want to do a little bit better. Going along with some of the examples here, there's our view confirmation message test. Yay. We have a templated test, and I'll show you what the template looks like in just a minute. We have the admin tour test. So you can start seeing some patterns of I'm using the same things over and over again. This would be called wet writing, write everything twice, in some cases thrice or 500 times. Let's look at that fantastic test template. I mean, who hasn't written a 40-line if-else end statement in robot framework like this? I haven't. I was forced to write one for the tutorial, but we want to do better because this is not very readable. Going in the REST test cases, at least I use the word REST and the word test in this test case. So here I have, that test case, verify some endpoints. Great, good job. That's completely readable. I know exactly what's going on here, right? Even have a little bit of the combined testing. So I have a little bit of REST, a little bit of UI work. Completely readable. I totally know what's going on here. So let's do better. Let's do a little bit better. Let's go to the next phase. Let's clean up and make the files make a little more sense. Break them up according to what you're actually testing. So here's the proposed structure. So now I've divvied up. I have tests that handle REST. I have tests that handle UI. Now you might say, hey, your URL navigation test is in the admin tests. And I use that as a gut feeling because it really is a UI test with a little bit of REST. And because it does touch on the admin side, that's where I put it. But, and this is the great part about this kind of framework, if I wanted to have a REST folder and a UI folder and a hybrid folder, that's totally acceptable. You're building your framework to match with your needs and what you actually want to do for your application. No one's here telling you what to do. What does that look like? Let's clean up the tests. Already things have changed. So here, I have my REST test, and then I have my UI, and I had my admin tests, and I have my customer tests. Marvelous. We're starting somewhere. We've divvied it up according to what each of the test suites are actually addressing. So let's do the next thing that people do so often. And maybe you guys don't do this, but I've seen this so much. Newbies, and I am a victim of this, I've done this, I confess my sins, is when you start learning about variables as a person who never has coded before, you get fascinated by putting everything in variables because you think that's the solution to everything. Variable this, variable that, wall of variables. And I'm going to show you what this looks like in just a minute, but there's some pros to it. You start abstracting and using business language. So that's cool, right? It's somewhat maintainable. So now instead of having like the same hard-coded value in thousands of places, you have one hard-coded value in one place. So I would say classified as the somewhat maintainable. Cons: too many variables can actually be difficult to manage. You have to know where all the variables are and what they relate to. Increased risk of this is such a robot framework thing. Variables that are same name that get hoisted up at different times. In robot framework, the first one wins. So there's a chance that two different variables that are named exactly the same in two different locations, depending on how you're running a test, could end up having a different value depending on which one of those variables gets called first. Or if you can, and anything that you declare as a suite level variable, any variable that you declare, just about, except for maybe local variables, can be overridden at command line. So you're really exposing what could be changed in your test run. But you're still trapped in using native library keywords. So you could be still doing a lot of duplication. I mean, a lot of duplication. And what do I mean by that? And I probably just, oh yeah, this was a joke. I'll get to that in a minute. Here we go. So now I go to variables only. Oh yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
Oh, by the way, Kelby, do you have that project somewhere online to share, or?
Yes, I will provide. Yeah, I have a Git repo for this.
Okay.
But and I'll share it at some point.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. There's a little bit, So now, because someone might spot something that needs corrections, like, hey, do it this way, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll do it that way. So now we've improved things. We've created a whole ton of variables. So hey, here they are, a whole ton of variables, and we're kind of using a little bit of business language. So now we have like the login button, the admin credentials are there, things that kind of makes this the booking environment. So now we're talking about environments and so we're offering up a little bit more control. We're talking about here's the admin navbar rooms list link or rooms link, so we're kind of adding the next level of thinking of, hey, this is great. And what does the test look like? They look a little better, a little chaotic. I would say this is kind of unreadable, but still, it's an improvement. You've improved maintainability. You've definitely started bringing the whole project closer to the language of the application that you're using. The context, let me go over to the contact message. Here we have some of the error messages are now extrapolated out. The locators for filling in the contact form are here. Let me go to the other one. But wait, we're starting to see something here. When you start abstracting all of these hard-coded values into variables, what you start seeing is duplication between the tests. So you're like, oh, wait, I have a name input over here that has the same value as a name input in another test suite. You're starting to see patterns that can be consolidated, that can be turned into a little bit more precise, a little bit more useful. How we got keyword, because as I like to point out, we are keyword driven test, not vars driven testing. If we were variable testing, what would be the point of writing keywords? So in order to do that, we kind of have to understand the first level of abstraction. Like let's make all of those independent variables into something that's a little more manageable and a little bit more natural language. It's fine to use some of those native library keywords. In some instances, it makes complete sense. It's like, why would I create a wrapper around this? For example, the Selenium keyword for reload page. Why would I wrap that in another keyword? Or you're waiting for something. And anyway, point being, let me get back on track. So first level abstraction. So it's the lowest level of business language. So you're clicking the button on the page. Fill in the page with whatever the name of the page is. So like click the login button on the login page. Seems redundant, but what happens is when you start translating it into human language, you start being able to read the test cases as they actually were meant to be. My baseline for whether I've written a successful test case or not is, can I manually execute the test steps that I've written in automation? Now, it's very easy in Robot Framework to do this because we are, you can write the keywords in your human language, wherever it be, German, Finnish, English, so on and so on. But you can still kind of do that in other languages too. I mean, there are methodologies for, writing your Java methods so that they are readable. There are avenues of using Gherkin syntax that you can certainly add on to, but Robot Framework just makes it a little bit easier. The other thing that I like to point out with first level abstraction is that simple arguments, no more than 5 arguments in a simple in a first level abstraction. Simple return values. Don't go hog wild on that. And they're typically easier to update. Just because, hey, I need to find the keyword to press that button on that page. Well, I go find that keyword and I update that and I'm done. And we will get to this in just a moment. We're going to go to code. I still don't know why there's a blank page there, but that's okay. This should spawn all sorts of fun questions. So we're going to talk about first level abstraction. Okay. Surprise. Nothing changed in variable land. I left all the variables unto themselves on their own. I don't need to change them, not yet. But now the test cases have changed. Now I'm actually using this first level abstraction in the test cases. So now I'm entering the name into the contact form. I'm entering the email into the contact form. Once you get kind of used to this pattern of I'm doing a thing to a place or to an object on the page, pairing up the action with the location suddenly transforms your generic using all those library-based keywords into something that's a little more tangible. And what do I mean by this? Oh gosh, I gotta close this. That's awful. So like here, I'm on this page, and maybe I should have called this the Shady Meadows bed and breakfast page. I don't know, Restful Booker page or something. I don't know, but I'm applying a little bit of logic to what this is. This is the name field in the contact form. And where do I get this? How do I form this? So let me step back for this. How did I come up with these names? Well, if you look at your DOM,
you can also zoom a little bit out, so you don't have to have it in this
oh yeah,
humongous font. It's
there you go.
Yeah,
Better?
that's fine. That's awesome. Yeah, that's good.
So where did I get this naming convention from? Well, front-end technologies use very depending on which front-end technology you use, name of classes and locators, they have their own language too. So look, I have a class called contact. So of course, enter name into contact form. So now I'm actually relating something that I've seen in the DOM into the keyword. So you're actually making a little bit stronger bond with the technology that you're using for your UI with the keyword that you're using. If there's something that's called a sliding panel, well, you would reference that you would do something in the sliding panel. If it's a modal, you would use that actual terminology in the keyword in some way. Conversely, if you have a keyword that has an assertion, I love the word verify. I don't like the word check so much, but I like the word verify. My reasoning for not liking check, like check the confirmation page. Well, for me, that's like checking a checkbox. That's why I like verify. Verify should contain, should be, and we kind of already use some of that language, that should and should not language, in a lot of the built-in keywords in Robot Framework. So just extending that out to your own particular keyword is a good idea. Before I go on to second level abstraction, and I'm looking at the time, any questions about this so far? Any concerns?
We have a question, but that is a little bit off topic, so we can put it in a little bit later.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I also like check the checkbox state.
Yeah.
Or just checkbox. So does it check it or does it verify it? So,
right. Verify.
Yeah.
Or assert that is always a good one. So here, I've gone.
We don't get a question, but we get some feedback here just from Peter. So.
Oh, nice.
So we have at least one person enjoying you talking. So
that's good.
So you're on the positive side for now. I did not get any bad feedback.
Oh my! For those of you who are more advanced, you probably, when you're already thinking this so far ahead that you've gone right to the resource file. But for those people that they have no idea how to approach building up these keywords and resource files, and that's kind of getting into closer to the next few steps. Just start that's the whole idea of starting with a test case. I often do this. Going back to the clean tests, I often start this way because I'm shooting for, I need a working test case to refine from, especially if I'm like testing something brand new. I will completely do this. So I sort of lied early on that I never have done this before, but no, this is something that I do first to get something working, and then being able to move it to a keyword abstraction level. And I might not do the variables, but I will at least start like building the keywords, and I build them in the test. I start them in the test because then I can get a sense of where are these things going to go.
And I think this is also a cool thing in Robot Framework. So you don't have to, I don't know, start with a page object pattern bottom up or something like this. You can do top down stuff. You can work with a test. You can use tools like, I don't know, Robot Framework debug, or just like debugging and then use the debug console and try out stuff. And afterwards then select, for example, some lines, use robot code to create a keyword, like extract keyword, create a keyword, and then move it somewhere else and use it from there. So yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, and what I really start looking for at this point, and not even at this point, later on, you'll start seeing repeatable patterns related to your application. And then you're like, oh, even though I'm making a business specific keyword here, if I'm seeing the same pattern over and over again, maybe, and I say maybe you make it a generic like utility keyword that all these other keywords can just wrap around. Yeah. Just remember, and I'm going to get to this in a minute, right now, actually. Second level abstraction, third level abstraction, so on and so on and so on. After you get done with all your first level abstractions, so all these really basic keywords, you may want to start combining those keywords into other keywords. And this is what I mean by second level abstraction and third level abstraction.
Oh no. Have we lost LD?
Okay.
Oh,
no,
there you are back. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. You were just freezing. It scared the crap out of me because I was thinking now I have to do that tutorial. So okay, you're back. That's good. Awesome.
No.
Proceed.
Okay,
We
proceed.
didn't get the last 20 seconds or so.
Okay, cool. So second level abstraction.
And by the way, we did get one question.
Oh, why did the gnome die? No. I had to fit him on the page. So okay. Anyway.
So he's just taking a nap.
Just taking a nap.
He's
yes.
so relaxed because now he understands abstraction. That's good.
So the second level abstraction's safe, but when you start, and this is when you start abstracting too much, it's up to you to deal with the logs, because you could, or dealing with troubleshooting, because as soon as you start getting past the second level, I would say third is okay-ish, but once you're off the deep end, maybe you need to rethink what you're doing, or how you're implementing it, because you will, all the time that you saved and being able to like implement keywords will be lost when you're having to troubleshoot why a test failed, because you're going to have to go through those logs. But this is where you can wait, you can enter in the whole form and hit the end button and have that all be like one keyword. You can start dealing with more complex arguments, more complex verification. So like verify the alert when clicking the button on the page. So you're verifying an alert and you're clicking a button and doing other things, and you're combining it all into a single keyword. This is something. Let's see, do I actually talk about it next? Oh, and finally, utilities. And I kind of talked about this too. Besides second, utilities, generic keywords that are composed of library keywords. If there's a pattern that you see that you're trying to verify a particular return value, and you're trying to determine if something, all those weird keywords that are combinations of those library keywords to kind of like assess some verification or parse some data. They have no real business relationship. That's not really like how your application is, but you kind of need to transform some data from one state to another state. Those have to go somewhere, and I call them utilities. In other languages, they're called helpers. I don't like the word helper. I don't know why I don't like the word helper, but I like utilities. They're very generic. They're very portable. So what I often do is I have a set of utilities that I've used between projects, and because of the modular nature of these keywords, I can just take an entire file of keywords, take them out of one project in one file, and plop them into another project. Then I don't have to keep on reinventing the wheel. Yeah, actually, if you see, I wonder if I can go backwards. I won't worry about it. Ooh, folder structure. Ooh, we're gonna get something fun. So now that I'll cover second, I'll come back to the second level and third level abstraction later on. But first, we need to talk about folder structure because that's what everybody's looking for. Now, obviously, in the guides, doc guides, there is the recommended folder structure, and that's like a quick, okay, I get a sense of what's going on here. But if you're building from the test up, the folder structure kind of depends on the application that you're testing. So this is just a list of things that you would expect to see in your resources. A common resource, test tooling imports. If you're using something like browser library or requests library or Selenium library, where you're pulling in plugins and other things that are setting up a particular way, having a single resource file set up to handle that import and deal with all that is a good idea. Environmental data, things like all the URLs for all of your different environments, dealing with all that in a single file might be a good idea. And so that's what would be found in like a common project. But I also have the concept of there are common folders within the product itself. So like something that's common to the product, and you can name them the same, just you can't put them side by side. So for example, let's say there is some kind of data that's used to a specific product, because let's say you have product A and product B in your project. Project A uses a certain common sets of keywords, and product B uses another set of common keywords, but you have to put that somewhere, and it's not specific to something like a UI testing or database or REST API. So that's what means by like a common for the product itself. And you can keep on going. You could have like a common folder for UI and a common for, I don't know, common for utilities. Not so much. But then you could also you could have your product folder, and then underneath that, you could then have all the interfaces available for that. So like all your UI resources can be in one place. All your database resources can be someplace else. All of your REST API can be in a different folder. The one thing that I would say is you really only need to build out what you need. So for example, I'm going to get to this right now. Resource files. So here in resources, hopefully you can here we go. So here, okay, resources. My internet is fine. I guarantee someone's trolling the Baltic. Someone's trolling the Baltic Sea or something. Yeah. I don't know.
Just blame me. I think yeah. It was already before the joke. Like the gnomes are playing around with your network cable or so, and now just you see what Gervin just said. Like, okay, gnomes strike back.
So resources. Yeah. So here's the common. But here, because I'm only testing one product, so I really don't need that extra layer. So I went right to REST, right to UI, and right to utilities. And what did I put in there? Well, let's see. So here I have handle all of my environment resources. So here I have some URLs. I have a test environment and I have a prod environment. The fun side note about the RESTful Booker is that they give you instructions on how to run RESTful Booker locally, both with Docker Compose and with just running the project locally. So I do have it running on my laptop right now. I don't know, but I also kind of put some things in here like common admin credentials. Maybe this isn't the place to put something like that, but we're building the project. The project's not done yet. Here I have some things related to requests. So I have some common headers. I have some of the extension endpoints to deal with. So like there's the login, the message, whether some things are read or not. In Selenium, I started moving all of the Selenium related stuff here. So like new web browsers here, boom. And this is the only place that I actually I'm calling in the Selenium library. All the other resource files that are using UI are pulling from this one file. So everything gets inherited downstream. So yeah, I have a keyword for new web browser, some very common things that I'm doing on a regular basis. So like the click me hack button. So when you go to the RESTful Booker, it has like this header that's not really part of the website called Let Me Hack. And I came up with a way of actually like pressing that button. Dealing with some tokens, being able to navigate to some websites, some of the pages via URL. So a lot of that piece is taken care of here. So for my REST resources, there's two endpoints I'm dealing with. So there's the authentication. So I put any of my keywords that I created in those test files, I put them here that if they had to do with authentication. And notice I have like authentxt here, which is part of the common. So I'm starting to divvy up like where things actually are. Message is a little bit more exciting because there's a few more endpoints to see. So like here I have a post request to message endpoint. Now, for those of you who have worked with requests, there's two ways to use requests. You can do just straight up requests, is what I'm doing here. And I chose this on purpose. The other thing that you can do is actually build a request session and interact through the session. I chose not to do that because I wanted to have the ugliest code possible. So there's all my request keywords. The UI I have broken up into admin parts. So here I have the branding page, the most exciting branding page on the planet Earth, one variable. I got the login page. There's all my variables that I created. And here's all of the keywords related to that. So you get the idea. And you'll notice that I'm okay with this. Because you're building this project from scratch. You got to have build some wiggle room in there. So here I have the messages.resource. There's only one variable in it. I know that there's going to be a complaint by one of my linters saying that there's no keywords in this document, or I haven't put in my documentation yet, which I also chose not to put in any documentation because I didn't want that to distract from the actual structure of the keywords. So once again, before you say anything, documentation is important. Do it. I didn't do it for the tutorial. But now, what do the tests look like?
There's always an excuse why not to.
I can do it later, right?
Shame.
So now you start looking at the test cases. First of all, the variable section is down to only a variable that's required for the test case. When I've gotten rid of all of that noise. But now all of those other keywords, except for the verify keyword, all the other keywords are living elsewhere. So now you've cleaned up your test cases. the one that really makes a big difference is the contact, the templated test. Still ugly-ish. There's a lot of words in there. But now, instead of looking at a wall of if-elses, you now see a whole bunch of verification lines. An improvement, granted, maybe not perfect. I could probably have spent another 2 or 3 hours to make this perfect, but maybe that's for someone else to do. Yeah, like I said, I will be sharing the GitHub repo. Uh-oh.
No, you're good. At the
I'm good?
moment, we
Okay.
can still hear you.
Okay, good. But you'll notice I've added something here that's new to Robot 7. I think
Wow, what's that?
What's that? I've grouped things.
Nice, cool.
Because I realized, because I was like, oh, I'm working on this, and this could be an you could do this for grouping. Maybe I don't want to create a keyword that does all these things. I could group them and name that group something, because why not? Let me see. Did I
think that's actually a really good, or a good example for a proper use case of group. We got a lot of oh, wait a second, let me open my camera. We got a lot of kind of opposing, or not a lot. We got some opposing voices for this group feature, like, hey, why do we want to have this inline grouping? You can just create a keyword. But here, for example, you would create a keyword that has the same argument interface as your parent keyword. And just to name it, enter test contact message data. And then you create another keyword, only use it once, with the same argument interface, just to name it verify error messages. And in that case here, we anyway have a keyword. We just want to structure it a little bit better in the report. And is this what you want to show, the report of the group, or
why? Watch this. I came prepared.
yeah. Maybe zoom in a little bit again. Super tiny for us. So maybe maximize it and zoom in or so.
Oh yeah, I can do a thing. There we are.
Yeah, and then maybe zoom in.
So let's go to that test case. So when you see the group, it adds, here's the enter contact data. So that's all there. See, there it is. And here is all the verify messages right here. Yeah, I create special shout out to I think it was Nisa, my coworker. Nisa's like, hey, you should have the test results of all of the test runs in all the various formats, so you can show that how different the logs look between the different iterations. And I was like, oh yeah, this is one that's going to come up because I'm using grouping.
Yeah, nice.
But as an intermediary stage, it kind of get you thinking, well, maybe these should be 2 different keywords. I don't know. Maybe Kelby's going somewhere with this. So that's that structure there. The other thing that I would highly recommend is, divvying up your tests according to product, to type. So I was kind of doing that. There were REST tests and there are UI tests. On the suite level, or like the top level folder, I like using the word tests, plural. And on the actual robot file, I like using the word test. Yes, I know what else would be in a .robot file other than a test. But in my brain, semantically speaking, when I see the word test in a file, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what that is. And tests, even though you say tests in that top level folder, it lets me know that there could be more than one. There could be only one. Doesn't matter. I found it infuriating because I used to do interviews where the person who was applying for the job would would be asked to do like a project on the side and submit the project to show that they knew how to do test automation. And they wouldn't, in the entire project, use the word test anywhere. And I was like, what? But where are, and I would say, okay, so where are your tests? Oh, they're right here. I'm like, and then I'd be like, well, why didn't you use the word test? I mean, granted, there are some frameworks that use the word spec, and that's fine because that's specification. Same thing though, but spec, test, actually naming it what's in that file is just so nice when you're like, it's 7 o'clock in the morning and all your tests have failed and it's a project you haven't seen in years and you've been asked to go triage something and you open up the project and you're like, where are the tests? Oh yeah, they're in the test folder, but they're also called tests because you might use resource files, which are great, but those would have .resource, you would hope. But there was a time long ago when Robot Framework, all the files were .robot file. Heck, a lot of time, there was even a time when they were just .txt. So,
or worse.
Oh, HTML. Oh, God.
Yeah.
So it's important to like use that naming convention. Just it takes very little time. You'll also see other kinds of folders. Like one thing I like to do is I like to actually have a results file pre-programmed into the repo. I throw a git keep file in there so that the results folder, actually doesn't disappear. But then what I do is I say, I don't want to check in any of the test results. I just want a reliable results file to always show up. So I throw the git keep file in there, and then I update my git ignore to like ignore any files other than the git keep file. It just adds a little bit of reliability. So if you have like scripts that run and process the test results, you are always going to reliably have a results file or results folder in your project. I like to have a quarantine place that I put my custom libraries, just because. And if I'm developing any listeners, sometimes I'll put the listeners in their own place. If I only have like one or two, or just like if I don't have too many of them, maybe I'll put them in custom libraries. They kind of belong in both spots. I will get to that. Yes. I was just noticing one of the questions, but you'll also see that in a lot of these cases, I'm saying add to Python path. And what do I mean by that? If you're using robot code, there's a setting to add folders to your Python path. If you want to avoid having to like put a whole bunch of .. lots of relative imports, put your resources folder in your Python path, your custom libraries, your listeners, just put them in the Python path. It makes it way easier to also not only clean up all the library and resources section, but it also makes the folders very transportable. So like if you need to move a test from one folder to another folder, you don't have to go back and update the imports.
Should we go at that point maybe through a little bit of the questions?
Yeah,
what do you think?
Let's go for it.
Okay, so we're starting at the top because Catholic is already waiting a lot of time. It's a little bit off topic, but it's so we are working with Robot Framework at embedded system level. We are facing issues because our devices interwork with many other systems. The test environment is not stable. Any suggestions?
Whoa.
Make it more stable.
Make it. I find that when dealing with the problem of environment stability, it's a struggle. I work at I work at a company where we have an environment that is being it's an internal QA environment that you never know at any point when some team is going to release an update because they're working on different aspects of the environment, and there's different like solutions and applications being run around. If the instability is human caused, like communication between teams is super important. A little bit of politeness saying we're about to release something ahead of time in a Teams channel or a Slack channel to let other people know that the environment is going to change is super important. If your environment is fluctuating due to more technical non-human issues, yeah.
I mean, in general, I would say involve the development in the issue and try to get them on board to be your team player in that case. So
yeah, I mean, if your tests are failing 1 minute and then 2 minutes later they're failing, passing and failing like that, and your environment is that unstable, that should be something that should be a concern for just general test reliability. And that's not just teams talking to each other. That's like you talking to management.
yeah.
If you are management and you're talking to me about asking me this question, then you get to solve a problem.
True. Gervin had more like a comment here. So validate, assert, verify. And then he said, okay, often I start with just a sort of list of agreed signal words to try to get some alignment ongoing. But abstraction is always problematic. I do agree. But I also do agree, and I found out in project that it often helps to define a glossary. To somehow say, okay, we use in our project also specific words for our business language. So because not always are words just about English, it's also, do we call that the customer management or whatever, that thing? So, and sometimes you have things in the UI that have no apparent name. For example, in our product, we have a tree where we have folders and we have test cases in there and some other things. So how do we call these tree elements? And then we came up with another name that is summarizing the tree elements.
Yeah.
To use that name in our test specification. So that would then test structure element was our artificial name for that. So, but everyone in the team knows if we are talking about TSEs or test structure elements, we are talking about these things. So coming up with a common wording for keyword-driven testing is always a good idea, and develop that on the go. So when you realize, okay, we have different meaning with some words, then intervene, make up a rule, and then follow that rule. And yeah.
And I would say, if you get a chance, there was a fantastic presentation by Guido and Frank, yes,
Yeah.
On business, like talking about business layers. That slightly inspired some of the stuff that I'm talking about here. But they talk about coming up with team standards for naming keywords. That is certainly advanced level stuff.
So if you want to find that, so you're watching right now a video from the Robot Framework channel. So if you click on the Robot Framework channel below here, you will find other playlists. For example, the playlist of RoboCon, I think it was 2024, so last year. You should find this in the RoboCon 2024 playlist, or at least in the videos. So it was Frank van der Koer and Guido Demeny. And so that is definitely something recommendable. Then we had another question from Adam. So, Calvi, great talk. To what extent would you recommend to use common files, and which use case avoiding them for? And before you answer, just an appendix, because directly Daniel jumped in and said, "Hey, Adam, I just wrote an article a few days ago, and maybe that's interesting for you. If you go to robotcode.io and then to the tips and tricks section, you will find this avoiding a global resource file."
I saw that. I was like, oh.
And that's, but I mean, your structure is also not global. Like you said, okay, concentrate that you, for example, import the Selenium library only at one point, use that one point and the other points. That is correct, but not just make one gigantic imports.resource that is always importing everything, and then you have always like 1000 keywords available. And if you make any single change, your whole IDE have to go through all these things, if there can be side effects, if you have duplications, and so on. So I think you would agree, like, still stay on topic with your resource files, right? So don't import the backend stuff if you're just in a front-end test. Don't import the, I don't know, invoice management if you're just in the user front end or stuff like that. And at the moment, we are getting also lost Kelby again, I think.
It's the troll. It's the
troll has already plugged the cable again. But your thoughts about that topic?
My philosophy is import what you need to import. So leverage your IDE, leverage RoboCon. If robot code is saying this keyword doesn't exist and you need to import the collections, I will certainly import collections to get the error to go away. But I only import what I need to import for any particular resource, period. Minimum is better. So
good. So we agree on that part.
Yes.
So we do have another question. I think this one you already spotted. Don't you end up with a lot of little keywords if you're having a very detailed abstraction level, e.g., click X button, click Y button? A colleague of mine prefers this approach because she finds it more human readable, but I find those little keywords become quite repetitive and redundant.
So this involves wisdom check. I kind of look at it as, I always ask myself the question of, where am I on the spectrum here between dry and wet? So dry, for those playing at home, do not repeat yourself. But sometimes if you make things too dry, when you start updating things, you end up breaking, like you're going to fix the one thing and then suddenly realize you're going to break something else. You're like, well, wait, hold on. You mean it's not the same in those two locations? It's entirely possible. The other way to go is wet, write everything twice or 3 times or 4 times. There's always a happy medium in there, and you kind of have to play it by, I hate saying this, you have to kind of play it by ear. There's no hard, fast rules. And it really depends on your team's acceptance. Like, if there's some horrible like workflow that's a whole bunch of little tiny steps that you need to abstract just into like one keyword with 1,000 steps, but it makes sense for your team and it's comfortable for the team that you're working with or yourself, you might be a team of one, then you have to kind of weigh as to whether it's worth it. When the part, and that's still only like one level of abstraction, one keyword with a whole bunch of small keywords is it's sort of okay to deal with, especially in like a log file. But when you have a keyword referring to a keyword that then is also abstracting another set of keywords, then you're getting kind of deep, and it gets a little bit harder to surface what's going on in your log files. That's the kind of abstraction that would worry me more personally. Although I think I've actually written like a 4 or 5 level keyword in my lifetime. because you have no choice.
Yeah, sure. Sometimes it happens.
Yep. All right.
Gervin, so Manana first, but then also Gervin digged out the talk, which is basically the one from Frank.
Yay.
But it's also visible in the YouTube comments, so you can see it there. We have another one from Frank just right now coming in. What about more contextual variables? Dictionaries, objects behind in libraries. Do you have any principles or rules there? Coming up soon. Okay.
Because that's the next. That is
more after the commercial.
No,
By the way, but seriously, the thing with complex data is, in my opinion, still a not really solved issue in robot framework. For example, if you say we have a keyword that deals with customers, and customers have 10 different fields or so, coming up with specific dictionary objects that are of a specific type and that always have to have these specific fields, it's not that easy. So there's a lot you need to know about the conventions, how to document them, how to write them. So that's personally not a directly solved thing. One thing I'm mentioning by Guido, and maybe I will give you a chance here to do that right now. Someone feed the gnomes. Kelby is currently too busy to do that. So again, I think the gnomes gave you a signal again to and unplugged your network cable. Now you're back again. Okay, nice. Kelby, what about making a 10-minute break right now? Because I think we have reached a good point where we can make a break.
Yeah.
And the other good thing is I don't have a hard end after our 2 hours, so we can exceed the 2 hours if you have more material, because
I mean,
I'm open-ending to the evening. So
we're at a good stopping point, because the pieces that are happening here are refinements of the whole resources.
Okay, awesome.
So they're their own globe of influence.
So then you can feed the gnomes, and I will play. Wait a second. And I will play a countdown soonish, and we will meet up again after 10 minutes. Again, one big shout out to our sponsors. So as you may know, this RoboCon is all organized by the Robot Framework Foundation and the RoboCon Orga team, where I'm also part of. So and Robot Framework Foundation is kind of gathering money out of RoboCon and also from our foundation members. So everyone throws a penny in the bucket, and with these money, we then developed a robot framework or fund robot framework development. We also started now, you used robot code there. We also start now funding robot code development so that we can, for example, get a better VS Code and a real good also PyCharm integration, which is released, and Daniel will have a release party of the PyCharm and robot code version 1.0 in the next days. And also there are some community members or companies or foundation member companies that are not just paying their yearly fee, but they also sponsor RoboCon. So here in special is Index 9, who are the platinum sponsor of this year's online RoboCon. Index 9 is a consultancy company from India. They have people there just doing robot framework automation for you as a service. We have TeamScale, who do very nice code coverage and intelligence on analytics on your actual test automation. And then we have BQA and Imbus, where I'm working, and Daniel is also working for, also as service providers or consultancy companies, same as Efficode, Vala, and Go4 from Finland. So BQA is from the Netherlands. So if you are from Netherlands, contact them. They know a lot about robot framework. They also have an accredited training, same as Imbus in Germany. Both. So we are talking German and English. They talk Dutch and English. And So, yeah, thanks for sponsoring. Kelbe, we are back in 10 minutes. Daniel
Okay.
just said tomorrow is the release party of Robot Code 1.0, so don't miss that. So if you don't have a RoboCon ticket, use your time now to book the ticket. You can also just select invoice and first just buy the ticket and then explain to your boss that you have bought a ticket and they are now liable to pay it. So you have always time to argue that tomorrow. So buy a ticket, support Robot Framework development, and Kelby, we will see each other again in 10 minutes, right?
Yes.
And feed the gnomes so that you have better internet then.
Right.
So, welcome back to our fourth and last tutorial of the day. Hello, Kelby. Oh, you found your
Hello.
child as well.
Yes.
You found the guilty one.
Yes.
So, for those who have just opened the stream right now, so we are here in the middle of our tutorial about building up projects from the bottom to the top, right? Or
Yes.
what was? Yeah.
From the test
So,
upwards.
yeah, test upwards. That was it. So, and sometimes Kelby is just frozen. So we were speculating that one of his gnomes is kind of pulling on the network cable or so because they didn't get feed or so, fed. So maybe now Kelby fed them. So hopefully everything will be good for the second half.
Hopefully,
And
we'll see.
let's see. It was definitely a lot of fun until this point here. So, Kelly, I think we can go on from here. For all those who are in the chat, please bring in your question, and either on YouTube or here in StreamYard, just add a capital Q column there, and then I will pull it up on the screen and ask Kelby that question. So,
Excellent.
Kelby, go on. Stage is yours.
All right. So let's start with a nice hot topic here. The page object model, something that's been around since creation. I think it's often misunderstood as to what it is or what it is not or whatever. But I think for my definition, I don't think of it as page object model, where you're trying to model an entire page from the UI or from any sort of interface, and you're trying to like make a single file that represents the whole page. I like to think of it as page object model, where you are trying to wrap those Selenium locators, or it's fun to think of it this way, but like the REST API, a lot of that abstraction process is very similar to setting up a page object. Might not want to call it page, but you know, you would definitely want to wrap around a particular locator endpoint a certain way, defining how it behaves. So page object model. And what do I mean by that? I can't remember what the next. Oh, I gotta get this is great. This kind of is a predecessor to what I look at as the pattern that really works very well in Robot Framework. So page object model. So when I talk about page objects, I don't talk about page, I talk about page object model. And what you do is you gather up objects that define a certain area of functionality on the page. So going back to that contact form, that whole contact form is a gathering of a bunch of input page objects with a submit button page object. And you kind of group them together. And then that is the larger page object that you work with. And the way you manage all these, because RF works really well if it's structured hierarchically, try to say that 20 times fast, you're just trying to pull in all of the different resources and you build them up into a single defining feature of your product. And for those of you that have played around or used composite patterns in other languages, because this is something I did not create. This has been around since like dirt, since object-oriented programming has existed. It's the idea that you take disparate little pieces of an interface and you define them separately, but then you bring them in together into a single class or a single resource file in this case. I wouldn't say that what I'm presenting here is strictly a composite pattern, like in the most specific definitions of it, but I would definitely say that it embraces many of the ideas. And those playing at home, the concept of the leaf. Leaf feeding into a trunk, and the trunk feeding into a larger model. So everything kind of like dumps downstream into your test cases. And that's a little bit of a precursor to the next slide, I believe. But small, well-defined keywords, mostly in the first abstraction. Typical resources found at this level, like the page objects I was talking about. Variable files get brought in. API keywords as opposed to page objects. Very basic stuff, but you kind of bring them in together for complexity, but you also make it more convenient to bring it into a test file. So instead of pulling in the page object into your test, you pull in the functionality resource into your test. So like, for example, come on, behave. Don't have this. I'm going to go to the next one. Oh. Rethinking. This is not in my presentation. Hold it. Okay, cool. Nope. Reset. I'll get to it in a minute. I'm going somewhere. So get that idea in place. So a single file to collect all of those leaves and components. And then you can build up even second and third abstraction spaces, so to speak. And notice I'm using lots of trees and leaves and stuff because that's kind of the concept. But Robin Mackay, hopefully I pronounced his name correctly, did a fabulous tutorial almost to the date a year ago at RoboCon 2024. I would highly recommend that you actually review that because it talks about the Rocky River, which is a do I have that bookmarked? Oh no. I don't have it bookmarked. Why don't I have it bookmarked? Okay. Give me a second here. Technical difficulties. Not gnome related, unfortunately. I can't blame it on the gnomes. But the concept is that you gather all of these resources into a stream of resources, and they all deposit into your test cases. So what does that look like? This is what it looks like. Here we have our resources with the environment resource, the requests. Selenium kind of covered a lot of this earlier on, but then it gets more complex. So now I've pulled out some of those environment resources and moved them to variable files. Thank you. Yay. Highly recommend following that. It's a very good presentation. I actually, for prep work for this talk, this tutorial, I actually watched that whole tutorial like a second or third time. So not much different as far as the files are concerned. Let's look at the project itself because I think it's more available there. So all those variables, you probably are not going to need it. What do I mean by you ain't going to need it? That's what Yagni is. There's wet, we talked about, write everything twice. Dry, which is do not repeat yourself. But there's also Yagni. That's Y-A-G-N-I. Just make sure that I'm pronouncing it correctly. Means you ain't going to need it. And what this means is that all of those variables that we declared, most of them you really aren't going to need it, especially if you're using a more keyword-driven approach to writing the resource files. So for example, I will not use that as an example. I will use the login page. All of the variables are gone. I don't need them. I'm not going to need them. I moved them directly. I'd moved all the locators into the resource file itself. Some people would say, but wait a second, you're tying two desperate things together and creating a dependency that shouldn't be there. You're tightly coupling things. Sure. But if this is the only place, so like if the wait for login header to load keyword only exists in this one resource, in this one place, and this one locator exists in this one location, why on earth am I making a variable out of it? That's just wasted. That's just like, I could use a variable. Why do I need a variable? I might as well have it live in the same place that the keyword is. If I ever get to a point where I have two keywords that are referring to the same locator, then I would contemplate actually making a more like suite level variable that both keywords could actually use. Case in point, let me see.
I would at least here add the addition, as long as the variable name in the end is better and more telling than the selector itself.
Yes.
So because if you have good data test IDs or something like this, and you have an ID that says, okay, I don't know, login button, instead of putting that into the button login variable, just use ID equals login button, please. Like you had here as well. So ID username, I don't know why use it 2 times. I'm not a big fan of that one. You are adding one extra line to have then 2 variables with curly braces and stuff. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, if this was browser library, I probably would do that because there'd be the one line. I wouldn't have to have that waiter. But here I am. I chose Selenium for reasons. But this is a process. Like, you can whittle it down. So to your point, I agree with you also. I on a regular basis, the next step here is, once I see it in this format, is, do I need that local variable at all? Maybe not. It's already in the same space. So like going in and like, swapping that out kind of makes sense. So I would do that. Now the login header, that's a little, sure, it's a header because there's an H2 in there. It's a little esoteric in there, but then there's that test data ID nonsense going on. So mileage may vary. Mostly I just wanted to show, like, this is the next step. Like, instead of hoisting up a suite level variable, then you're bringing it into the keyword. Then you can decide what you do with it at that point. The cool part about doing this, running it this way, is that now that keyword, let's say you have to do a little bit of reorg. Let's say you add some more functionality, or you start like checking some other things about the login, and you need to like divvy up the resource files even further. I can just highlight that one keyword, cut, copy, paste, and move it to another keyword, and that keyword would still work. And back to the page object, a single file with nothing but variables and locators is not a page object. It isn't. It's a page of variables. That's what it is. Yep. Just because in my eyes, a page object model is, you're describing a location and an action. If you just have location and no action, are you really modeling the way that the page behaves? Probably not.
And I mean this in general, the idea of page objects are coming typically from a more object oriented way. So you say, for example, login page dot username field dot fill or dot empty or dot whatever. So you have this object oriented way that doesn't really work with keyword driven testing because you're way more procedural here.
Yes.
But still, having this navbar resource, having this login dialog resource or so, and having the keywords that are actually touching this UI there is a good approach. Again, like if you have spelling locators, I'm definitely on the way. Even if I write them 3 times, I can use search and replace. for me, it would be more readable. If you have a damn XPath like you there, maybe I give it the name and use it then. So I would do a mixed approach here.
Yeah. And this is where I let myself say, this is the way I'm sorting out this, like which is the best pattern for this project.
Your mileage may vary. Sure.
Mileage may vary, yes. And you're really trying to understand that you're describing the way your application works. That's really what you're shooting for with like your keyword names. And I knew as soon as I started delving this far into the topic that there would be opinions, and it's okay to have them. And if you
and
have
don't
a good
use XPath, by the way. Just kidding.
And don't use XPath.
Learn CSS.
I almost think that when the person that put together the RESTful booking website, he tried really hard to like force you into certain locator patterns. Like this one, I tried. I'm on page with you. Trust me on this one. I would not have done XPath is like the dead last thing I would have actually used here, but this works. And like I said, working is better than not working.
Definitely. And in CSS you cannot use just text. Then you have to use the cascading selectors, which is a good thing in Selenium and browser library. But yeah, there are reasons for it.
There are reasons,
as always.
Some things that you may notice is I trimmed down the environment resource folder document or that file. Jeez, brain slightly off. Where I've actually like said, okay, I'm just gonna do a little bit of extrapolation here and put them in a more convenient file. Like, you know, I now have an environment variables file. So I have all my environments located here. It makes sense. So someone was talking about context and structures. This is a good use of a variable file that has like some nested things. So now I can say, hey, I'm going to run the test in prod and it'll look at those domains in the URL. Or if I run it in test, it'll be whatever's running on my laptop right now. Other things that I've done is instead of having a separate variable for each of these little endpoints, I've tied them all together as the extensions for my REST API. So now I have an auth, a message count, and a read. The advantage of doing this is I've taken 4 variables and made it into one variable that can be referred to later on. And so therefore I'm actually like tying an area of concern into one zone. Same thing with the Selenium side. Oh, I'm trying to. Did the same thing. The URL extension to those locations, I simplified it all, and I've started to align it. So like if you look at that one, so you have the admin. Oh, look, there's not an admin one here, but like, you know, report is report here. Oh, and I didn't. Messages. There we are. Messages are the same. But you might start seeing when you start pooling together these different extensions into a single dictionary of extensions, you might start seeing some crossover, and that gives you an opportunity to get a little bit drier. So you only have one place to update like your REST API stuff and maybe your URL. It's okay to have them separate here because, you know, UI and REST API can be different. Some other things that have changed. Let me see. So nothing new here. Although you start looking at this and realize, these are all following the same general patterns. The only reason why I abstract this to a URL is because this is freaking long. This is very, very long. Very, very, very long. So it made sense to define it once and then just refer to the local URL variable. See, is this where I add to utilities? No, nothing in utilities yet. I'm going to get there. That'll be my second level abstraction stuff. Customer, the contact form. So now I've taken all of those error messages, all those alerts, and related all of them together into one variable. I put all of the alerts in one variable. So now when I'm like checking for those alerts, I don't have to have like too much in the way of like all those separate variables. Plus it makes it more portable. Like eventually maybe this ends up being an entire single file of nothing but error messages. Who knows? I kept the alert box because there's more than one keyword using alert box. I think it's used like, I don't know. Let me do a check. 22 times that's referred to. Actually 21 times. Let's see. Do I have that keyword yet? Did I make that keyword yet? I don't think I made that keyword yet. That's in the next level. That's in the next iteration. So you see, we start refining things. You start cleaning things up, because I have found when I'm going through and actually like triaging and troubleshooting where things fail, or if I have to update something, if I know that there's a failure in one particular keyword, I just find the keyword and I can update the keyword right there once. I update it once and it's done. The other thing is, by removing all of those variables in the variable section and moving them into the keyword, you have less chance of variables being overwritten because of what I said earlier. If you have too many variables, the chances of the values being overwritten during runtime go up. How does this affect the test cases? Let me see. And they go back. Oh. So second abstraction. So this is where things get a little more intense as far as like opinions, how do you manage things, that sort of thing. Being able to really start leveraging utilities, because, for example, no, not thanks yet. Let me move to that. Second level abstraction. So now I still have my contact.resource, but now I've moved to two different resource. Now I'm pulling in two resource files, one that handles all the contact verifications and one that handles the actual contact form itself. So let me look at the contact page object. So this is where I start. This is my version of using page object model. Each of these keywords maps to a particular object on the screen. So like here's click the button on the contact form. Notice I'm not even using a local variable there. I just use it straight up. Yes, I'm using them in this location. But now I've created a second level abstraction. I take a whole bunch of those smaller keywords and put it into a single action. Why did I do that? Because of the test template that I was using earlier. I'm not really testing this anymore, so I just conveniently made that into one keyword. And remember when I did the grouping? I grouped one of the parts exactly like this. So I just took that group out and put that one keyword in. Here, all of those error messages, I moved them off into a different file. I handled all the verifications in a different place. Now, some would say this is a kind of page object because reasons, but these are verifications, and typically you don't want to have your verification logic living in the same place as your page object, because your page object is defining how the page should act. And if you have keywords that actually verify whether something is alerting or not, that can be managed elsewhere. So the idea of having a resource file that's only designed for verifications, totally acceptable in my book. And here, so like here's all of those error messages. Here's all those confirmation messages. Yay. And here we have the same verifications, all the if logic, totally abstracted out. I do a quick check to see if the value coming in is gonna fly with what I'm doing. I came up with like, I don't know. I had to pretend, I had to create some things from scratch, which probably already exist as like library keywords and built in, but I was doing it for the tutorial. So I check some things, I verify some things, no big deal. But then notice that I'm using the same keyword over and over again, verify alert box message. This in some ways, this would be considered a third abstraction, because the verify alert box message does an abstraction of the alert box that shows up when you throw in a bad message. And I've created a little, and look, I still do this, even though technically I only really need the one. So you can start seeing, like, you start breaking down this. Now, what could happen is, let's say I'm testing a whole other area of my project, and something that I've put this alert box page object in the customer zone, but it's the same logic that's used in the branding page or used in the rooms page on the admin side. Then you say, aha, that page object is its own thing and should be brought up to a common UI location. So someone was asking me, what do you put in your common space as far as like your project, as far as your product is concerned? Well, if you're using the same logic for an alert box in two different locations of your application, and it's exactly the same, I got to stress that. Then you take this, you promote this page object into a more universally, you no longer relate it to the customer page, you actually relate it to the larger product. Also, going into the utilities, this is what I mean by a utility. You have to do some weird regex evaluation. This is where for a particular string that really doesn't have anything to do with your product, but you kind of have to verify against it. This is what the utilities are for. So you have some regex stuff going on. Or you're testing for weird states of value. Yes, I know probably most of this stuff there's already a built-in keyword for, but I decided to make it from scratch because I needed some way of demonstrating that you can do these sort of things. So like testing for if something's a space or if it's empty or none. Yeah.
I just realized a missing rule in RoboCop.
What?
Don't do else after return.
What?
So you have your is something and then return. The else is not needed. You can just write an end and proceed on the same level. Because you're already returning, so
yeah.
Make your code simpler. But also that is an evolution. First, make your code working, then refactor your code to make it nice.
Yes. And if you look at the test case, so let's look at the errors one now. So here, I added a few more test cases in there just because. But now, at this point, when you start like Interesting. When you start actually like abstracting out all of the different steps in your test, then you start bringing in like the suite teardowns, the suite setups. For example, let me go over here to the URL navigation test. You start cleaning things up. Like this is when I finished, when I actually like finally got done with this example for the URL navigation test. You don't there are no variables.
Mm-hmm.
There's no strange, weird logic going on. There's a little bit weirdness going on in the test setup and maybe in the test teardown. But generally speaking, this is plain, this just reads really well. There's like, I remember doing a presentation to a group of developers who were interested in test automation. And I showed them an example like this. And I got hands down the best compliment from any dev I could ever get when it came to like demonstrating robot framework. They said, you just write the keyword and it knows what to do? And I'm like, sure, with a little bit of work, but that's kind of like, this is like the epitome of what you're really shooting for. It's very clear what's happening. You've abstracted away all of the noise. There's no like weird variables going on. It's very clear as to what's going on. You navigate to the reports by URL and you wait for the report calendar to be visible. Done. It's very straightforward. From this point onward, it's really just refinement of certain other things. Like I know for a fact that this is pretty awful still. I had, it's kind of readable, but you can actually like, the next step is something that I hadn't put my foot into yet, which is look to see what structures are available in the libraries you're using to clean these things up. So like for example, I'm using token cookie everywhere here, it's a test variable. And if I adopted using a session in requests instead, I wouldn't need to do that. And that would actually clean up a lot of what you see here. So I did have like bonus material that I haven't finished because reasons. But the next step is, can you make the code more readable by leveraging a different way of implementing the library that you're using? For example, a lot of these UI tests have, here's another one. It's actually a pretty good example for how clean it is. Sure, there's a lot of steps, but you know what's going on. It's very easy to read. Can you take this new web browser and this close all browsers piece that's built? Those are like the new web browser, not so much, but the close all web browsers. Can you take those and move them into an init file for an entire bunch of tests? Really clean, just remove as much of those those core library keywords and just concentrate on what you're actually testing.
Okay, and now here we had already a gnome again. Let's see if Kelby is coming back soon. Oh yeah, there you are. There you are again. Okay, go ahead. We already have also some questions, but you may proceed
anyway,
or say when you want to get some questions.
So at this point, everything from here on out now. Hold on, let me see if I get. Oh, come on, really? There we go. Oh, look, thanks. Questions.
Okay, big applause, Kelby. That was really a lot of fun. With your nested if else, you really had kind of triggered some of the nerds in the chat. So, like Kevin directly said, "Oh, best practice, blah blah blah," and then with single access point, and Daniel directly responded, "No, single access point is not state of the art anymore." And then Gervin jumped in. However, we got one question that is kind of unrelated, but maybe still relevant. So Raymond asked you basically, thank you. That was a great stuff. But the question was then, do you have any specific guidance for Git, GitLab, and Mac users? Any resources you can suggest or share?
Number one for Mac, understand intimately how to use pyenv.
Absolutely.
Don't install Python directly on your system.
No, and don't try to get rid of the Python that is installed already. So
Yeah, don't.
No,
So
don't.
There's advice
needed.
Advice number one, that would be it. And the new one, can I see the question again? Because the first part.
I think it was Git, GitLab, and on Mac and guidance.
GitLab. So my recommendation is to join Slack and ask the question to look for people that have used GitLab. I might know at least one person who uses GitLab actions and things like that with Robot Framework. I'm not going to name names, but they know who they are. But if you ask the question like the Robot Framework channel, I guarantee someone will help you. They will go out of their way to help you.
But still, also from my side, so when you work with Robot Framework on Mac, pyenv, so it's pyenv, that is definitely something you should look for. So install pyenv. I think it's brew package.
Yeah. Yep.
Same works for Java environments. There's jenv for different Java versions on your Mac, and there's also NVM for different Node versions. So this is pretty vital, and work with virtual environments, of course, and use VS Code. That's maybe from my side as a long-time Mac user now with Robot Framework. Yeah, then we had, wasn't there something else?
Maybe.
Okay, I think that we had already.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, Kevin was saying, hey, single access exit with a return, so only having one return. I would also, as Daniel, object that point. Do exit early if you have an exit point. So, for example, work these guardian clauses like if something, then exit, and then you can proceed on the same level after the return without having the else there. Yeah.
Now, the one thing I would argue about this. Okay, fisticuffs. What if you don't? So, what if you don't want it to return anything? If it doesn't meet that value.
Yeah, but in this case,
for example,
sorry, you are anyway returning anything. So you have either if value equals something, return true. So you can remove that else. Yes. No, because this is just a single line. So you could use an inline else, inline if.
Oh,
so
do.
Yes, and then remove the else and the end.
Okay, I'm doing it, and then yeah,
and then so that would be, for example, one possibility.
Okay, there I did it.
In the try except, then there you have a return afterwards, which is fine. And also in the nested stuff, you could definitely clean up that one, because everything in the else block does not need to be in the else block, because in the if you can already directly return that thing again.
I don't know. I was, like I said, I was throwing this together really fast.
All good. That was just I just said these people are going nuts on that in the chat. So I think there was one here. I think that we had not yet on screen. So proposal, by the way, what would help me to make Robot Framework better in reliability is to not to have to make assignments of variables at the beginning, but still make visible context in the test case. Assignment where I need. You can do that with a var syntax.
Yeah.
Not really sure what you mean. So there was So before, you always had to use set variables somewhere to create a variable or make a variable assignment.
Yeah, like
But as Kelby has shown, yeah, let us
like
hide
here,
that one.
I have a test set up that I have to turn off RoboCop because it says you
Doesn't
can't
like
have
the
a test.
scope, right?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
But yeah, here I have a test set up that gets the cookie that needs to be thrown into the response, and I set it up on the fly because it,
Yeah.
and then it's used responsibly at the test level here.
I
So I mean,
still would recommend in that case to have some kind of variable section token cookie that is set to none, for example, with a comment set dynamically or something like this.
so you would actually have like that.
Yeah, I don't like the empty. I mean, this is now an empty string, right? But you could just add a comment here and say, okay, is set dynamically or so, something like this.
Like something along those lines.
Something like this. So then you know, okay, that thing happens and it happens by something. But however, there again, whatever floats your boat. So we also have, well, we have some more comments. What do we have? I have to check it. So there was Kevin. There are exceptions of every rule. Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
And Manana about return statement and exit points. There is something in the guidance for Python. So here in Pylint, pycqa.org. Maybe you can look into that.
Wow, so true.
Oh, by the way, don't use Pylint anymore. Rough is way better.
Yeah.
And Rough is faster. Rough has awesome rules, and you can Rough for doing formatting and everything, and linting and everything.
So you don't need that bait.
Yeah, you don't need Black and Pylint and IceSort and Flake 8 and everything. Just Rough. RUFF. Awesome thing if you do Python libraries. What do we have then? Best practices are more like guidance, than actual rules. So I was parlay, so it's more like a guideline, no real rule. Guido also just shamelessly claimed some of his Python toolchain. Actually, I don't know what is in there, but Guido is typically more or less reliable. So maybe you want to look that up. Don't know what I shared right now. And then it was about return value of keyword. Wait a second, what is here? So value my var. Okay. So returning directly from a keyword. Yeah, this is this inline keyword calling thingy. Yeah, it's a thing. Maybe we'll discuss it another time. By the way, whoever is still like in the stream and wants to join us for a chat, I at least will be at the Gather Town. So maybe go to the beer. Kelby, are you joining as well?
I probably will. I'll have lunch with you guys. It's lunchtime.
Maybe have a chat. At that point, I want to bring up a big, wait a second, shout out to my son. He just came in, so I'm here since 8:30 or so, and now we have 6:44 in the evening, so shortly before 7 p.m. And he made the sushi himself, and so 11-year-old son, so he's now making sushi and thought, okay, maybe I'm starving down here, so he brought me something to eat. So
nice.
Thank you very much, Liam. That's awesome. Thank you. And so anything else, Kelby, from your side? Or
no, just treat your gnomes with respect, otherwise they'll cut off your internet.
definitely. And maybe one thing, Kelby.
Yes.
About this all, like variables and how to define variables and so on. There, you just participated some exam, right?
What?
You are now an officially certified
Yes, I am.
robot framework certified professional, right?
Yes, I am.
So congratulations to that.
Thank you.
All others except of you got a handwritten certificate. I still think I can send you yours, because Kelby
Okay.
was one of the brave guinea pigs that I used to pilot our exam, and he passed with how do you say, like, waving flags. So
Flying colors.
yeah. So thank you very much, Kelby, for helping there, and
All right.
for all your contribution for this nice tutorial. So really appreciate your activeness and your controversial topics also. It's not always how do you say it, commonly agreed what Kelby does, but it has always like brought people to think about what they are doing and if they are doing it right. I really also like what was the name of your weird case keyword?
Oh, sarcasm case.
Sarcasm case, yeah. So keywords was just like randomly upper lowercase and throwing in some spaces and underline key thing, yeah. So yeah, there was it, like here. It's sarcasm case. So yeah, thank you very much, Kelby. I hope I see many people of you tomorrow at RoboCon.
Woo.
Grand opening. I assume, Kelby, you will be joining us in the afternoon, right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and then maybe in the evening again in Gathertown. So thank you all for being here. Please share the video, share it with your colleagues, share the knowledge about Robot Framework and also the knowledge about Robot Framework Foundation and RoboCon. Yeah, that's basically all from my side. Any
All right.
words of wisdom from your side?
I have lots of words of wisdom.
Okay.
But you know, I will say that these are guidelines. You know, you join this tutorial, you probably, if it's something you don't want to do, that's okay. But if you want to do it and you want to like really understand the layers of like how to do this refinement, and review the video, bring it back to your company, implement something fun and new. There's no harm in learning and looking at something a different way.
Awesome, Kelby. Thank you all. Be excellent to each other, and bye-bye.
See ya.